Hey, welcome tonight, and welcome to this great building and space. We're excited to have you all here. We're in awe of it, and the before and after of the Santee Auditorium here is just incredible, so I'm glad to have you all here. Tonight we kick off our inaugural discussion on growth. You know, a few months ago, the City Council discussed the need to really face this issue and face it honestly. So we're here with Robert Groh from Envision Utah, Tim Henney, myself. And so I think there's a button I'm supposed to press. Usually everything goes blank when I do that.
A lot has happened since we decided to become a resort-based mountain town. Today, we are dealing with the unforeseen impacts and numerous opportunities. How do we preserve a strong sense of place, character, and heritage? How do we respect and conserve the natural environment? What do we do to advance a diverse economic base? And how do we manage sustainable growth? How do we support and promote a diversity in people, housing, and affordability? What can be done to foster a strong sense of community vitality and vibrance? The decisions we make today about transportation, housing, and economic viability will have lasting impacts on our community and the environment. Where are we going, and how do we get there?
So tonight I'd like to introduce Robert Groh, who is Executive Director of Envision Utah. And he's here to kind of give us an idea of what's happening in terms of growth throughout the Wasatch Front and all around us. Robert, as I said, is Executive Director of Envision Utah, and he holds degrees in engineering and law from the University of Utah. I knew that I liked him. And the J. Reuben Clark Law School at Brigham Young. Well, there's that. He's had a diverse career, including practicing law, leading and supporting regional visioning processes, being president of a large manufacturing company, and chairing a national trade association. In 1997, Envision Utah launched an unprecedented public effort aimed at trying to keep Utah beautiful, prosperous, healthy, and neighborly for future generations. As a neutral facilitator, and he is neutral, as a neutral facilitator, Envision Utah brought together residents, elected officials, developers, conservationists, business leaders, and other interested parties to help make informed decisions about how we should grow. So, Robert, welcome.
Well, it's great to be here with you this evening. I'm going to talk about Park City, not because I live here and not because I know all the things you know about Park City, but I'm going to try and talk about the context in which Park City finds itself for the next generation or two as you look towards your future. And at Envision Utah, we have been doing another sort of grand visioning project over the last 2 years. We gathered together 400 experts on 8 task forces looking at 11 topics and looking out to the year 2050. What will Utah be like as Utah adds a projected 2.5 million people to the 2.9 million people who are here today? And so that's the question that is embedded in your Utah, your future, and is an effort for Utahns to understand what choices they have and what are the consequences of those choices as they move forward. So I always have to show this slide. If I don't show it, my wife gets on my case when I get home. These are some of my grandchildren. Now, the little boy on the right in the red shirt is exactly 50 years younger than me. And so tonight I'm going to talk about abstract ideas. What will growth be like here in Utah? But what I'd like you to do is to try and focus on somebody you know, a child you know, and start to try and cast your mind forward. What will life be like for them? What will it be like a generation from now? What will it be like 2 generations from now? Because these are abstract thoughts today, but the earlier we think about it and make good decisions, the more likely it is that the future will turn out really well for them. Now, we've had our survey of the Your Utah, Your Future effort online in the months of April and May. We had 52,000 Utahns respond. It's the largest response in U.S. history to an online survey about the future of any region or state. And so we're really excited about those responses. We had 445 Park City residents who voted. It was in the top 5% of zip codes, which means you were well represented, better represented in most places in Utah, and another 1,044 Summit County residents. In addition, we had a contest going on with the high schools, and Park City High School, I think, won the high school contest with about 900 votes. So we tried to get the education about this out into the schools so they could learn about the future as well. Now, there are a lot of interesting perceptions about growth in Utah. If you ask the average Utahn, where is the growth coming from? 3 out of 4 of them will say it's coming from people moving into the state. 1 out of 4 will say it happens by growth from within. Well, this is a very complicated chart, but the red line on that chart is the natural increase year after year from births over deaths. And so you can see, and then the migration is in green. In some periods, the in-migration has actually gone negative. There's an out-migration during large recessions. But you can see in almost every year that the natural growth rate of Utah has been at least double the in-migration and out-migration growth rate. And so what that says is, you know, Utah's growth is a result of Utahns choosing to have families and to continue to grow, plus other people joining us here from around the country because you've created such a wonderful place. I mean, Park City is one of the most unique, special places there is anywhere. By the way, it's always been one of my hopes to get to give a talk in Park City. So I finally got here tonight. 2 goals, Park City and MIT, and I did MIT last year, and Park City this year. So this growth is a challenge, but it's a challenge Utahns are bringing on themselves. And so Envision Utah is not about encouraging growth, spawning growth. It's about just how do we accommodate the growth that may come. Now, I'm going to show a couple slides tonight that are about attitudes in Utah. They may not mix with your attitudes. So I'm hoping you don't shoot the messenger. The effort here is to let you know what's going on around you so that you can think about how to respond to that. And the attitudes of Utahns are somewhat different than they are in other parts of the United States. And this is a good example. 6 in 10 Utahns feel positively about growth. By a 2-to-1 margin, people are more like Mr. Smith than Mr. Jones. And Mr. Smith believes that growth should be strongly encouraged and fostered, and Mr. Jones believes that growth should be strictly managed and limited. And so Utahns by a 2-to-1 margin are pro-growth. That doesn't mean everywhere in Utah is pro-growth, but it does mean that if you take Utahns as a whole and you take the greater Wasatch area, Wasatch front and back, Utahns are supportive of growth. Now, the semi-rural areas and rural residents, you can see the note down the bottom, 37% of them agree with Jones, which is a higher number. And so those who are getting hit by the wave of growth in the semi-rural areas are less intrigued with what growth will bring and are more worried about it than are the people in the already urbanized areas of the state. And so that's how Utahns in general feel. So will we be able to stop the growth? Is that possible? Or is it likely the trends will continue? Well, as long as we produce good jobs in Utah, and as long as we continue to have this wonderful place, other people are going to come share it with us. And most Utahns think that's okay. So these are the Governor's Office of Management and Budget projections for the growth of Utah. And it goes back historically to 1970, and it goes forward to 2050, or about 35 years from now. By the way, these projections have been very accurate decade over decade for a very long period of time. And so it's highly likely that unless something big were to change, that Utah's growth could be like this. We could add that 2.5 million people. And so what does that mean for Park City? Well, one of the things we've done in the Your Utah, Your Future process is study how much available land there is in all of the major counties of the Wasatch Front and Wasatch Back. So when the governor's office has made predictions about growth in Salt Lake County, they've never known how much land was available in Salt Lake County. And so for the first time over the last 2 years, we've developed databases where we have every piece of property in the Wasatch Front and Back in 11 counties mapped, and we know what is on that property. We also have Carbon County, where Cedar City is, and also St. George. And when you do that, you learn that Salt Lake County only has 36,000 acres of possibly developable land left. That's not very much. And so the governor's office has projected Salt Lake County just continuing to grow, almost straight-lined it into the future. But we now know that Salt Lake County's filling up. Only the purple areas are left to fill up in Salt Lake County. Now, if you come over to the right, you look at Davis County. Davis County only has 14,000 acres left. Also not very much. And Weber County is a little less than Salt Lake County. It's also filling up. And so where is a lot of the land? Well, it's in Utah County. You can see that in the middle. It's in Tooele. It's in the Wasatch Back, and I'll talk more about that. And so where's the growth going to go? We know from the best projections possible that if we continue to grow at this rate, Salt Lake County will be completely filled except for major infill projects in the next 2 decades. And Davis County will be filled up by the same time. And so that means that our growth patterns are going to be different than they've been in the past. So you can see we see where Park City is up here in the mountains. Well, then you see the Wasatch Front and Back. You can see the Salt Lake Valley in the middle. And so, for example, people started moving north out of Salt Lake Valley into the Farmington area. But that's filling up now and will be completely full in the next 2 decades. Then the next place is West Weber County, which is a long ways to the north. In addition, people have been moving south to Provo and Orem, but that's filling up on the east side. And so they're following down I-15, but now they're moving in large numbers to Cedar Valley. If Salt Lake County continues to fill, people are moving to Tooele County. But what about the Wasatch Back? Well, you have the road that goes to Morgan, right? You have Parley's Canyon, and you have Provo Canyon. And those 3 accesses provide good opportunities for people to live in the Wasatch Back with you, as opposed to living in Tooele. So if you look at the travel times to some of those places, how long does it take to get from Salt Lake City to Park City? Well, it's 40 minutes. Salt Lake City to Tooele is just about as long, and there are about 5 nights a year when you will be blown off the road by a blizzard and not be able to go home at all, okay? Salt Lake City to Ogden is 45 minutes. Provo to Eagle Mountain is 40 minutes. Provo to Heber is 35 minutes. Now, you've already all voted because you live here. But this is a really smart group who live in Park City. You picked the best place to live. It's a fabulous place. Where do you think everybody else would like to live? Yeah, they'd like to join you. And so I'm going to show you some numbers in a few minutes, and you need to understand those numbers, they're not my numbers, but they're projections, really good ones, about what could happen. Well, I've already told you Utah could essentially double its population by 2050. We're under just doubling. By 2060, we're over it. Well, what happens? These are the Governor's Office of Management and Budget projections for Park City. What does it tell you? Well, you're climbing up 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000. Now look at this, almost flat between 2000 and 2010. Did nothing happen up here between that period of time? A lot happened, right? But it was mainly second homes. I mean, this is your resident population, and it didn't change very much, but the number of homes certainly went up. 2/3 of your homes are second homes. They're not permanent resident homes. And so if you look at this projection from 7,500 people to a little over 17,000 people by 2060, so in 50 years, adding 10,000 people, at an average family size of 3 people, that's only about 3,300 units. You have more entitled units right now in Park City than that number. And that's a 50-year projection. So that says that you will grow by 2.5 times, just by either by people becoming residents who are currently second homeowners or by people building new units and moving here with you. That's a possible number. And it will occur either because you have a lot of people who bought secondary homes here who decide they really, really want to live with you, and they're going to join you permanently. Plus, you have a lot of entitled units that could also be built. So is Park City going to grow? It's almost shocking to think that you could do anything but grow with all this going on around you. But how you grow is really what this is about. How you grow, the choices you're going to make are going to be really important. Now, I want to show you what's going to go on around you. This is the Summit County projections from the Governor's Office of Management Budget. It goes from 1970 to 2060. These are historic numbers. Where's the most of the growth going in those projections? What's the blue? It's unincorporated. Where's Park City? What's the yellow? Right there. Okay, so what's going to go on in Park City is only a small portion of what's going to go on in the county around you, and you can see that if you're in 2010, you're at 36,000, you're going to go to 107,000 in 50 years. That's tripling the population. That's tripling the population of Summit County. So you will be growing faster, it's projected, than the rest of the Wasatch Front and back. Now, what about that other county over the hill? You know, they're just right over there, a stone's throw from here. I want you to look at those numbers, right? 2010, the projection, they were at 23,500, and they're projected over 50 years to grow to 96,000. That's a 4-to-1 growth rate. For every person in Wasatch County, there will be 4 of them by that period, if those numbers turn out to be right. Now, I don't know if those numbers are perfect. Nobody does. They're projections, and projections are always wrong, but they may be very directionally correct in what's going to happen. So you're in this island. You know, Park City is in an island, but you are surrounded by really large potential moving parts of the growth patterns of Utah. And so what you decide and what your neighbors decide is going to be very, very important. Now, I want to point out a couple other things about where you live, which make this a special place. Number one, most of you know that Utah is largely government-owned. About 80% is federal and state-owned. And most of that is in southern and central Utah. If you go down to Kane County, only 4% of the land in Kane County is privately owned. Now, this map is designed to show you what could happen. Where could the growth go if you're really going to get 100,000 people in Summit County and 100,000 people in Wasatch County? Where would they go? Well, you can't build on things that are too steep. So we've marked out slopes of 20% in brown on this map. We then did constrained lands. That means they're federally owned, like a forest. Okay? Developed areas, you can see Park City is right there, and you can see the reservoir over the hill, and you can see Deer Creek here, and Heber is right here, okay? But what is the white on this map? That is land that is in private ownership. Unlike many parts of Utah, which are largely government-owned, Summit County, Wasatch County are not. They are largely privately owned and also not steep and also not in a category of land which is unusable. And so because of that, you could see dramatic growth potential in the Wasatch Back. In fact, 20 years ago, when we did a visioning effort about the future of Utah, the most scary thing that came out of that was the recognition of how much private land there was in the Wasatch Back. I remember the day that a group of us discovered that on a map and said, oh, I won't tell you the rest of the phrase, but we were very, very worried about this even 20 years ago, about what would happen with the Wasatch Back. So in the Your Utah, Your Future process, we've called together with the governor 400 experts and stakeholders on 8 task forces studying what 11 topics could turn out like, what these 11 issues would be like in Utah in 2050. And so we've developed scenarios for each of these. The whole survey is online. You can still go take it, although we've quit collecting numbers. We're now crunching numbers. But there were 4 scenarios for housing, cost of living, 4 for education, 4 for agricultural. The scenarios, if we choose to do this, we'll end up here. If we choose to do that, we'll end up here. And they were put together by the best experts we have in Utah looking at the future. And then we took each of those 11 and we packaged different versions of the outcomes on those 11 into 5 scenarios. And these were the 5 scenarios. They were named affectionately for Utah icons. Now, you probably knew the Utah fish was the Bonneville trout, right? And as of a year and a half ago, a group of school children in central Utah got our tree to be changed to the quaking aspen opposed to the Denver blue spruce, right? What's the Allosaurus? Anybody know? It's the Utah fossil. Okay, by the way, an Allosaurus is a big mean thing like a Tyrannosaurus rex, or you can go see the the I-Rex in the new movie that just came out this weekend. But it's a big, mean one. So these were the 5 scenarios where we packaged different outcomes on the 11 choices together for people to think about. And I'm going to give you just a simplified version of what those are for a second. Seagull was we make efforts to keep our economy and quality of life strong, but we make minimal changes in what we're doing, and we avoid making large investments in the future. Bonneville Trout was we continue what we've done in recent years and what we're doing now, but outcomes may be different than they have been in the past because things are changing around us, either because of our growth patterns or because of our circumstances. Quaking Aspen was one aimed primarily at economic strength and resilience of the state, economic diversification, connection to economies around the country and the world, higher resilience to natural disasters, we produce more local food, and so on. Allosaurus. Now, some have accused us of putting the dinosaur on this on purpose. Okay, but it wasn't that way. This one, we do not implement any strategies to achieve a vision. We just let the future roll out. Future left to chance is not a legacy we've wanted to leave our children. Now, that's this scenario, the Allosaurus. By the way, high school kids liked the dinosaur. They were fond of that one. So that one got pushed a lot, particularly when you got down to the 9th graders. On Sago Lily, that was essentially a green scenario. Actions are taken to minimize the impacts on the environment. We improve both our environmental and community health. And so, but each one of these had the 11 topics in them with different outcomes, and people could study those. Did any of you take the survey? Wow. My hat's off to you. Thank you for doing that so much. I don't think I could have held a community meeting anywhere else in Utah. I would have got that many hands up at a group this size. Okay, so the scenarios are still up online. You can go read them and study them. I'm not going to do that with you tonight, but I want to talk about where you are today a little bit. So where's Park City on this map? Park City's right there, and Heber's down there. What reservoir is that? Jordanelle, and down here? Okay, you all got it. Okay, so current growth, current development, existing development is in that blue. Okay, so you can see it scattered around here densely in Park City, around Summit County, and so on. Down Heber, you have the growth. Entitled development is in that color of pink. Entitled means that somebody came in with a plan and was given a set of legal rights, and there's about, I think, 20,000 plus units in your area which are entitled. So if you look at the amount of developed area and then look at the amount of pink, where somebody's already got some set of legal rights about development, there's a large amount of entitled growth. This sort of sets the stage for you about what's going on around you. So not only are we projecting a lot of growth could come, we're also saying a lot's already happened in the past to set the stage for some of that growth. So this is sort of the important point out of all of this, a series of things about how different outcomes could be for you and for Park City depending on choices you make. So I'm not going to go back through the scenarios, but if you look at the amount of acres we will consume in Utah by urban growth by 2050, it's a huge difference in the amount of farmland, environmentally sensitive areas, and so on we could impact by growth. And this is an example of one of the reasons that's a concern. This is a map from 1990 on the left, on the right 2010, but it's designed to show your fire risk. This is from a national source. Intermix areas are where you have an intermix risk. Intermix is where you have housing in the middle of the woods, so to speak. They're intermixed within the area, and that's a fire risk. Now, I want you to look at 1990. Which one has the most risk from intermix? Look how much it's changed in terms of percentage in just 20 years in this county, this area, Summit County and Wasatch County, just because of the growth patterns over the last 2 decades. Now, the other category here is interface. That's where you actually have a real urban area up against a forest, which is also a fire hazard. You can create the fire or it can burn your houses down, either way. And so that has a lot to do with the growth patterns. You know, how safe you will be in these counties has a lot to do with the growth patterns you select and those around you select. Whoop, skipped one. I want to talk about food for a minute. I'm fond of food. You can probably tell by looking at me that I am really fond of food. I'm glad you brought in dinner tonight. And anybody else have the chocolate cake? A little slice of really good chocolate cake. But this is a self-sufficient today. Excuse me, the blue lines are today, And the orange lines are in 2050, predicting what happens if we just continue to grow as we're growing to our food supply in Utah. We're about 95% self-sufficient today in grain in Utah. You probably didn't know that. That was news to me. That'll drop in half by 2050 unless we change our behavior with respect to agriculture. Right now, we're more than self-sufficient on protein, but 134%. That will also be cut in half, and we'll be importing protein as opposed to exporting protein. Right now, we're an exporter. What are our protein sources in Utah? Turkeys, hogs, hog farms, you know, lots of beef cattle, sheep, and so on. Well, that makes up that protein source. And look at on the far right at dairy for a moment. Right now, we produce 1/4 of the dairy we consume in Utah. And with the almost nearly doubling of the population, that'll be down to 14%. And think about sort of the locally grown food. We've known at Envision Utah since last year that there's been a seismic shift in Utahns' attitudes about food. 7 years ago, we surveyed Utahns and asked them, is it critical to the future of the state that we protect and preserve agriculture? 53% said yes. We did that same survey last year and it went up from 53 to 74%. A shocking seismic shift in attitude. And a lot of it, when we polled them, they didn't even know these numbers, and neither did we. We're down to where we produce less than 3% of the fruit we eat in Utah and less than 2% of the vegetables. And so you can see all of those declining, and your county, Summit County, Wasatch County, these areas we're going to grow on the Wasatch Back, many of them are agricultural areas today. And they produce some of that protein, a lot of that dairy. They're a big concern long term, I think, to Utahns. And so if we're not producing fruits and vegetables, where are they coming from? Well, we used to get a lot of it from the San Joaquin Valley by Fresno. But what's going on in California? Big time drought, right? So where's our fruit and vegetables coming from now? Mexico. And how far is it coming? Just think of the carbon footprint of a carrot that comes 1,000 miles, okay? I mean, think of how long that supply line is for our fruits and our vegetables and a lot of our dairy today. And so Utahns are getting very concerned about agriculture. Well, is that a feeling that's shared here or not? One other thing that happens with growth patterns is it costs the government more money or developers more money to build the infrastructure, and then you have to maintain it long term. And under the different scenarios, depending on how compactly you grow, the cost per unit, these are costs in billions, these are numbers with B's after them, for billions of dollars. Okay, $30 billion on one set of scenarios, down to $20 billion. That's $10 billion savings over a 35-year period. That's real money that will come out of Utahns' pockets to fund their local governments. So how do you want to grow? Then there's a big question about where does our water come from? And there were a series of scenarios here. The light green at the top is how much under each scenario you conserve. In this scenario, you conserve 34%, and then you had to get the rest from these sources, the additional water we need. 17% conservation, 36%, 53%, which means there's really not one blade of green grass left in the Salt Lake Valley or in Utah County or so on. And then you have your choices. Are we building the Bear River Project? Are we building the Lake Powell Pipeline? Are we taking the water from agriculture? Now, I just talked to you about the attitude about Utahns at agriculture, but look at the amount of water that would be coming from agriculture. Those are the important kind of decisions. And we have cut our water use in Utah down by about 25% in the last 2 decades because our lot sizes have shrunk. Just by the lot sizes getting smaller. The average lot along the Wasatch Front and Back today is 25% smaller than the average of all the lots that existed pre-2000. That's a dramatic shift in our growth patterns, and it's saving us a lot of water. Well, where are we going to get the next round of water from? You know, what's going to happen if our weather and climate continue to show signs of changing? So there's one other important question. I've sort of talked about how expansive will the growth be, how much water will we consume, how much agricultural land will we consume. Well, what about the question of what you do inside the growth? How do you organize the growth structure itself? And there's a big difference depending on how well you plan. Now, Park City has had very sophisticated planning for a large number of years. It's one of those places in Utah that's that's really looked nationwide and tried to pull out the best approaches nationwide. And this is one of them, which I know your planners have focused on, but this is a map of the Salt Lake Valley from one of our scenarios. It is a scenario that had a pattern of centers. This scenario, all these things in orange with little yellows around them, they're all of the old commercial centers on 7th East, 13th East, 33rd South, 39th, 45th. What if you brought those back to life and in the new areas built new centers? The same question holds true for the growth that's going to hit you, that's going to be even more dynamic and dramatic than we're thinking about in the Salt Lake Valley. And so what kind of growth do you have? And I've thrown up here a couple slides about Daybreak, because it's one example of a mixed-use community where you actually have everything you could possibly need within a very short distance. You realize that 90% of the kids who go to Daybreak Elementary walk to school, but if you go 10 blocks to the south, it's 15%. I mean, just the way you design communities to bring destinations close to home, to make them convenient, to make them walkable, has a dramatic effect on the future of what it's like to live there and how convenient it is. So this is a photograph of Soda Row, which is the small town center, one of the small town centers in Daybreak. Just to give you a sense, and it fits beautifully into the area right next to the lake. Well, in these scenarios we did of the future of Utah looking at 2050, one thing we did was we restored that pattern of centers in two of the scenarios, Quaking Aspen and Sago Lily. And then we measured a mile circumference, how far would people have to go to find the things that they would need, most of the things they would need in their life. Sort of the first round of conveniences in their life. And just by focusing on creating the right urban patterns, 85% of Utahns, 85%, could be where they could walk or go less than a mile and get many of the things they need in their lives. And that's a very sophisticated kind of planning about the nature of places you create long term. And I can tell you that I've been having a lot of fun. I spent 3 hours today looking at statistical results from the surveys. And I'm not going to give anything away, but Utahns like this idea. They want it walkable, they want it convenient, they want things close to home, they want to be able to get out with their kids and with their friends. And it makes a big difference to the way your life feels, but it makes a big difference other ways too. This shows you the scenarios for air quality. That line in red is, are we in compliance with the current health standards? And so under these are the 5 scenarios, but under 3 of the scenarios, 2 of them we didn't get into compliance. And those scenarios are we just keep doing what's in the SIP today, the air quality standards of today that were just passed. We aren't in compliance in 2050, largely because the mobile sources, which shrink and shrink and shrink, are replaced by the area sources, our houses, our buildings, the energy efficiency of those. But I want to show you this one in particular. This is what we believe Utahns will end up picking, is a scenario that gets us into compliance with air quality standards and gives us a margin of safety so that we're breathing for sure clean air, and if the standard changes, we're ready for it. We're not cast to another dark period where we've got 5 or 6 years out of compliance. But I want to show you what it takes to get to the scenario where we actually have that kind of a margin of safety. It's a 40% reduction from where we are today, and this is what has to happen. Every Utahns got to drive 25% less. Even with the cleanest cars, every car is a clean car, and 1/3 of all cars have no emissions. Even with it that clean, we have to drive 25% less. In addition, all the gasoline has to be cleaner. Every existing building has to be, all existing buildings have to be at least 30% more energy efficient. New buildings are 50% more energy efficient, and wood burning decreases by at least 75% per person. And that's how you get there. But think about how you organize the transportation, land use, and so on to get you those kind of air quality improvements. So we could actually drive 25% less every Utahn, and now that's almost twice as many, and up here it'll be 3 times as many potentially, to get those kind of results. Another thing that is important as you look at these scenarios for the future is, will we provide the kind of housing people want? And I want you to particularly look across that dark blue right there. That's the missing middle in our housing market. That's townhomes. You know, these are different sizes of single-family homes on lots. That's multifamily up there. And under any scenario of the future, about 20% of Utahns who would want a single-family home will be buying a multifamily home because of the market forces. And so as that shift occurs, we need to produce a lot more of these ones in the middle for other people. So it suggests that the markets themselves are going to continue to change. How large are lots? What's the mix of housing? And so on. And those are decisions we largely make in our cities and towns by the planning decisions through our mayors, our city councils, and our planning commissions. One more thing about the benefits of organizing it so people can walk, they can get around to close things, is this is the typical Utahns budget of the median income family, about $58,000 a year, okay? Now, I want you to look at how much they spend on their mortgage. Right there? Where is it? Blue, right there. That's mortgage and utilities. But how much is transportation? This is 2 cars, not new cars. This is, you know, maybe 1 junker, 1 semi-new car, okay? And look how close those have become in the last 10 to 15 years in our culture. And so as you look at that, if you want to lower the cost of living for everybody who lives in Utah, how do you do it? Well, you bring the destinations close, and then as you bring the destinations close to people, you build a transit system that makes it a lot more likely for people to reduce this dramatically. So those are some of the outcomes, those are some of the outcomes that you can affect for the lives of your children and grandchildren, and if you're young enough, for your own lives for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Those are important decisions, and the reason we did the Utah, Your Future process and presented these choices to Utahns is we see that as they see the outcomes, they begin to shift the direction they want to go, and we make better decisions. So, in summary, how Park City itself grows is largely up to you. But that is really limited to Park City itself. But because you can't completely control what's going on around you, and we've talked about the growth pressures in all of Summit County, all of Wasatch County, as Salt Lake County fills up, Davis County fills up, Northern Utah County is filling up, and so on, there's going to be real competition for people to want to go to the best places to live that they can afford. So much of the growth that's going to happen that will impact Park City, when people have a home over in Wasatch County, where do they come to ski? Where's the best skiing on earth, right? So they come over here. You're the center of all of the activity, you know, that goes on. And so much of the growth will be in these surrounding areas, but they're not going to leave you alone. They're going to want to take advantage of all the things you love about Park City. And so the really important issue is, how do you prepare proactively to mitigate the impacts? And this is going to require significant collaboration and planning, working together with those other governmental entities that have a lot of say in the future of what's going on around you in the Wasatch Front and in the Wasatch Back. And it's never too late, you know, to take those steps, to really look out long term and make good decisions about where you are today and where you'd really like to be. Vision Utah was founded on the concept that the people have the right to choose the future. Government officials are elected to serve that vision. And so I think it's really a wise decision that you're taking a look at your growth and going to think about it, work hard at it, and make some really good long-term decisions about where you'd like to end up. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm going to turn the time. Councilman Henry.
Well, thanks, Robert. He pretty much covered my entire presentation, so I'll just leave it at that now. In case anybody was wondering, I was a sago lily, and I have a feeling that a lot of us in this room were probably quaking aspen or sago lilies, because that's the type of community that we tend to be. We like to think of ourselves as. And I'm going to try to take some of the concepts and ideas and things that Robert's presented and distill it down, bring it a little bit closer to home. Over the last year and a half, let me go to there we go. Over the last year and a half, as member of City Council, it has become apparent and clear to me there exists confusion and anxiety in our community about growth. And let me name what I hear as the confusion around growth. Do the steps we take as a community and government create, cause, enable, or encourage growth? Or do they address the growth that is already entitled and on our doorstep? And what's the connection and relationship between those two? This confusion about what creates and causes growth adds to the level of concern and anxiety and does not allow for informed, fruitful conversations about a myriad of separate but related issues that affect our community, such as Mountain Accord, public transit, affordable housing, redevelopment in Bonanza Park, Treasure Mountain, and at the base of both the ski resorts. And without a clear understanding of the growth that is already entitled, what creates, causes, and enables that entitled growth, we're not able, and we will not be able, to plan for the future. Every time we attempt to do so, we are sidetracked by the concern and anxiety that we may be enabling or creating additional growth. My basic premise, based upon and informed by the type of data that Robert just presented, is that growth is coming. It is significant, and with it there will be potential impacts and possible benefits. The baseline of understanding I'm hoping that all of us can reach as a community together is about the entitled development and what we can do with it. Once we understand what is inside the city limits and at our doorstep with our neighbors in our region, we can plan for the future and attempt to mitigate the impacts while leveraging the possible benefits. I believe planning for transportation, affordable housing, and redevelopment is an effort to address what development is coming and does not necessarily create additional entitlements. I also believe it's the responsibility of elected officials in local government to dispel confusion within the community and enable a deeper understanding with regard to any topic that becomes a hurdle to effective decision-making and a bottleneck for further issues. I believe this has happened with respect to growth in our community, and that's why I think this conversation is necessary, and I'm very pleased that we are having it. How we deal with today's development and growth has the potential to define the culture, fabric, and character of Park City well into the future. So let me try to shed some light on the entitled development and possible growth we in Park City are confronted with. This is what's in the pipeline. So here's a little bit more of a detail and blow up of what Robert was presenting. Currently, within Park City city limits, we have 10,000 already built units, some 66%, and Robert mentioned this, alluded to it, of which are second homes and resort bed base, which means we have roughly 3,400 units of primary residential home. We also show an unbuilt entitlement, which we believe translate to roughly an additional 3,400 units that are likely to be built in Park City. So we have 10,000 units that are built that translate to 3,400 residential primary homeowners, and we have an additional 5,000 entitled yet unbuilt, which will translate to most likely built out 3,400 additional units. We don't know if those will be second homes, primary homes, resort bed base, but that's some fairly significant growth. That's inside city limits. Most of the remaining entitled development exists in the areas of Treasure Mountain, Bonanza Park redevelopment, and the base of PCMR in Deer Valley, and the last of the infill that's occurring around town. So far, so good. Not an overwhelming amount of growth left in Park City because we're reaching our final build-out of entitled growth. But wait. In the Snyderville Basin, there exist 14,000 yet-to-be-built entitlements in the Snyderville Basin. I'm not talking Summit County. I'm talking right next door on 224, Snyderville Basin. 14,000 unbuilt entitlements. Yeah. Also, in Wasatch County, there are around 20,000 unbuilt entitlements. These figures came from the county's Community Development Director, Pat Putt, for the Snyderville Basin, and from Doug Smith from Wasatch Planning. So there's a lot of possible development and growth surrounding us, and I think we need to pay attention to that, and I think that that's what Robert's showing you in the big picture, and that's what I'm trying to distill down into what's affecting our community. So if 30 years ago we were looking at these same numbers, and 30 years ago there was almost a desperate desire to encourage and create growth and a vibrant economy, we would also be living 30 years ago in an area that was much less developed and much more able to absorb coming development and growth. But today, with our built environment, we are very close to meeting or exceeding our ability to carry additional development and growth, and we feel the effects in our traffic congestion, our event fatigue, our construction impacts, air quality, and general noise level around town, and that's just to name a few of the impacts. Today, each additional unit and any additional growth is felt acutely by the community. So the question for all of us is, how are we going to digest, mitigate, or prosper from the additional development represented by these existing entitlements and possible growth that they represent? What steps will protect and enhance our quality of experience without enabling additional growth to occur? And what is in and out of our control? Well, we don't have control over everything. There are a number of jurisdictions involved in our growth, including the state of Utah and the federal government. We have very little sway over the decisions made at these levels. That is why we are really focusing on 3 levels: Planning Commission, City Council, and our regional relationships. Our Planning Commission makes sure development applications comply with our land management code, which is how we guide our land use, through restrictions on building on steep slopes and sensitive lands and compatibility with surrounding built environment. We are able to sometimes slow, and in some cases, even reduce growth. Our City Council develops the overarching document, the general plan, which is derived from the vision of the community and how it sees itself in the future. That's the good news. We have some tools. The bad news, we've already applied them to arrive at the entitlement figures I presented earlier. So those entitlement figures take into account some of the tools, some reduction, and are actually a likely development figure, and that's going to lead to some significant growth. So even with these tools, the current condition of being at or exceeding our ability to digest additional growth leaves us with significant entitled development and possible growth. What about our regional relationships? There's an understanding that we are all in this together, that Park City is part of a larger region, and that the larger region has its hands full with issues similar to ours. You may be aware of the general plan discussions going on right now at the county council level with regard to additional entitlements versus build out of existing entitlements prior to any addition. And that's been a back and forth conversation. It seemed like there was a great deal of community and grassroots support to just take that exact action. No more additional entitlements until we build out existing, which seems to make a lot of sense. And then some people presented the concept and the idea that if you limit your development options, you're going to limit your ability to use development to leverage benefits for the community, such as transportation hubs and affordable housing. And now it's back in the hopper, and who knows where they're going to come out with this, but it's a topic of discussion and a very serious one. It's just not that easy. And again, this brings me full circle to why we do the things we do as your municipal government and how that can become a vicious cycle. We take on challenges to protect the quality of experience for residents, and by doing so, this place becomes more of a place and more of a place that people want to visit and live. And then we get the growth. So I believe that we're at a critical crossroads, similar to ones we have faced in the past. Park City has changed a great deal over the last 35 years, and we have arrived where we are because of conscious choices that set us on an intentional path to make Park City a place we are proud to call home. Not surprisingly, many would like to join us here. The growth we are experiencing today is a result of those choices and decisions, not luck or random chance. Today, we once again have the opportunity to make informed, conscious, and intentional choices about our future, just as we did in the past. In Park City, we have a rich history of public engagement in creating a vision for our town. Seeing all of you here on behalf of our community gives me great hope. If we can take responsibility for our current growth with the shared understanding that more growth is coming, we can plan accordingly to protect and enhance the quality of experience we enjoy today for future generations and ensure a whole and complete community. My final point is that I believe we need to remind ourselves continuously that the initiatives and steps we take to achieve our shared vision and goals for the future are our best attempt as a community to protect and enhance our community's collective quality of experience and are not meant to encourage development and growth. When we develop a regional network of 400 miles of biking and hiking trails, support our local schools in becoming some of the best in the nation, spend millions on creating a more walkable community, build a public transit system that is the envy of every resort community in the US, install flower boxes on Main Street. I had to throw that one in there for Miles, because that's his favorite one. Build plazas for places where people gather and build community. Renovate historic structures and repurpose them as City Hall or a library. Promote and support the arts and culture. We get what we have, a town that is attractive to many and available to few. We could stop spending millions of dollars as we have over the last 30 years promoting ourselves as a place that is special, authentic, and worthy of visiting, and that might stop the growth. It would also significantly affect our quality of experience as residents. Those are the crossroads at which we find ourselves as a community, and the question is, which path will we choose to take? That's it, but I do want to say one little thing, and that's about, it occurred to me that 30 years ago, when this was going on, when this visioning was happening, nobody could have foreseen where we would be in 2015. That just wouldn't have been possible. But there were people who thought that we could develop. There were people that we thought we could have a vibrant ski economy. There were people that thought that we could enhance the experience and the quality of life here for the local residents. And that has happened. So it reminds me of the little train that could. We're the little community, the little town that 30 years ago thought it could. We did. We have that opportunity again before us right now, today. We are still the little town that can, and we have to figure out what we want to be 30 years from now, no matter how grand that vision is, implement the steps to get there, and I think as a community and as a group, we can do that. Thank you.
Well, it's a daunting subject, growth. It's a difficult subject, but we want to be open and honest about that. We wanted to be clear about what's going on around us. Understanding growth is complex. It is not a single-cell, homogeneous organism. It has many components to it, many shapes and sizes. It can be vertical, or it can be horizontal. It can be like a Clint Eastwood spaghetti western. It can be good, it can be bad, and it can be ugly. Growth can be abnormal, or it can be in balance. Some parts of our community grow much faster than others, and some don't grow at all. We need to understand more about growth with regard to Park City because it threatens our core values. We need to be clear what the appetite for growth is around us. We've heard a little bit about that tonight. We know that in the Wasatch Front, Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County, to some extent Summit County, and Wasatch County as well, that their appetite for growth may be different than ours. We need to remember that our enthusiasm for that growth, our growth, is not the same as theirs, nor is the speed of change as fast. We need to remember our visioning lessons of 2009. And if we are sincere, move towards changes in our planning documents and codes to achieve that which will respect and support those goals and values. We still have a lot of work to do with our land management code. Some of the factors that impact and stimulate growth are known to us. We know that adding more lanes of traffic to the roads and building fixed rail rapid transit are growth stimulators. It falls under the phrase that if you build it, they will come. Building more infrastructure, sewer, water, gas, power for future can also accommodate and encourage growth. More parking, of course, means more cars. Dealing with growth issues within our city limits is our primary responsibility. What is happening here is interesting. Our population of permanent residents is not growing as fast as the rest of the state. In the last 10 years, it's grown very little at all. We're losing residents in Old Town. We've lost people who work here and now commute. We're losing seniors who are downsizing and moving out. And most of the children of our community, as they go away to school, never return to live here. Second homes and condos are constantly on the rise, and we see more and more buildings, shops, and restaurants. Our growth is primarily economic growth and resort-based. And as we continue to market the fact that we are a world-class year-round community, we can simply expect that we will see more people visiting. The potential for more of this sort of growth is high, and we could, over time, see millions of square feet more of. We've heard from Tim and Bob. We know that we'll be building more in Bonanza Park, at the base of the ski resorts, and possibly even at Treasure. The market and the time play an important role in this. So this isn't going to happen overnight. These entitlements have existed for decades, but we know that this is in front of us and we have to plan for it. We must acknowledge that the growth patterns of our town, and for that matter, the growth patterns around our town and in all the adjacent towns in our communities, are based on the automobile. All the subdivisions and streets were meant to be used by cars, and it's extremely difficult to integrate mass transit back into that land pattern, with some exceptions, which our great hope is still the big white bus, blue and white bus, right? So if everybody just stayed in their homes, commuters alternated their arrival times, visitors came on odd and even days, we have eliminated all special events, no Sundance, really, and no more holidays, the impacts of growth wouldn't be an issue. But we know that isn't happening. We will see much more growth around us in Wasatch Front, Wasatch County, Summit County, and there's no doubt that they want to visit here. We will see more destination skiers, day skiers, construction traffic, and commuters. The real issue here is these growth impacts are what we have to plan for, the impacts of the growth around us. FEMA and the Red Cross plan for negative impacts to communities. Now, they don't want to encourage hurricanes and floods, but they know that they have to deal with their consequences. We can take a lesson from them with regard to the impacts of growth around us and the flood of traffic that is coming here to Park City. We're looking at the days where we have had and will have the perfect storm situation that creates gridlock in Park City. Fortunately, these days are few. We know that we can deal better with those with safe traffic and intersection management. Perhaps we can even have the city manager declare an emergency on those days and restrict residents from driving until the traffic congestion is gone. We're presently working with the county to improve our ingress and egress through the gauntlet at Kimball Junction. And we'll continue to explore other traffic mitigation strategies with our transportation planners at the city and the county as time goes by. We cannot, however, design a transportation system that increases our potential for growth or accelerates that potential, because that just creates a bigger problem. We need to solve the issues that we have at the moment with regard to those days and those breakdowns. Each community that surrounds us has an interest in working together to solve their problems, to achieve their desires and intentions. As with the Mountain Accord, we should engage and work with them. But our plans and our core values are different. Our appetite for growth is different, and our intentions are different. I've raised 2 daughters, and when they were younger, they brought their dates to my front door. And I know that the dates' intentions were different than my expectations. So let's do this with a clear understanding of those differences of intentions and expectations. And yes, I do have 2 son-in-laws now. We've been very smart, in fact, brilliant with regard to defining our edges of a town with open space. This moat has separated us from things beyond our control. To some extent, it has protected us. In the future, we may need to do more to keep Park City who we are. What might we do next? Well, let's not freak out. This is a heavy, heavy discussion. And I just watched my anxiety go up as we spoke this evening. But we do have choices as to how we grow, where we grow, about height, about density, and we have choices about transportation. We want balance in our community, and we want to be a complete small town. And we absolutely want you to stay living here. So what we need is your help. And there's a way for you to do that. And I'm going to invite Ann up to tell you how you can leave some information as you leave the door. Thank you very much.
So what's next, Park City? The whole reason for our evening. You all received a handout tonight. Looks like this. On the back of the handout, there are 3 questions on the top. We're hoping that you as community members can think about these questions very specifically, and that you will join us on the 23rd of next week or June 27th in a community conversation to talk about what you heard here tonight and about your thoughts as you've thought of other projects that have been discussed in Park City. All the locations and the times are on your handout, and the mayor will be out, the council members will be at those meetings. They're going to be there to listen to you. This is their turn to talk to you. Now it's your turn to talk to them. If you are unable to come, or if you already know what your thoughts are around this, we have sticky boards on the outside of this room tonight. You were given a card that was inside this pamphlet. Feel free to fill that out and to post it at the back. We'll have staff out there to help you. We also have extra markers or pens if you need them. And with that, I appreciate you guys coming out, and special thanks to our speakers tonight. Thank you.